We always save the best for last. Could this be the best for last? I think this might be the best for last. This is the last of the NFL divisional previews for the fantasy football season, and we are going to the AFC North. Welcome in, windailysports.com. By the way, use the NFL promo code NFL 2021 at the when you go to the site, when you sign up, and you can get $100 off a 6-month Win Daily Gold membership. So how about you go on, do that, because what you're going to get in that gold membership is all of the rankings that we are about to go over right here. Every ranking, every number, you hear, hey, he's the 32nd ranked wide receiver. If you hear that, that is because we are all taking it from the Win Daily NFL season-long rankings from Sticks Picks, who is really good at this, by the way. So you should probably take a look at those rankings. And Stoweby, was I right in saying maybe, did we save the best for last?
Definitely the most interesting, because they've got a lot of different pieces, a lot of different options here that I do like, and potentially some kind of league winner type guys buried in there that may separate you from the rest of the crowd. So I do like it. Yeah,
I like it a lot. And I guess because you mentioned, like, there are a few interesting spots here. I think probably the most, and where I'll just start right away, Pittsburgh, because that offense it was a weird offense. Like, it wasn't good. I don't think Pittsburgh's offense, I'll say, was ever good. It was just different, not what we expected. It was a short yardage, high volume passing offense, and that's all it was. There was nothing else to it. It was basically drop Ben back 40, 50 times, try and get chunk yardage, small yardage gains each time, and just hopefully find your way into the end zone. Do we expect that to be any different this year? Like, is Ben healthier? Are they actually going to be able to run the ball? I mean, that to me is why, I look at last year's numbers and I go, okay, like, I can maybe take some of that, but a little bit is, like, I think this might be a completely different offense than what we saw last season.
I completely agree on both counts. Though the yards per carry for Ben last season was an aberration, it was partly because they were trying to figure something out with kind of the run game being the mess that it was, and they were trying to figure out something as far as the protection goes for Ben. And with the wide receivers dropping so many passes last year, they were tooling around with things, and that's kind of why you saw a lot of that kind of dink and dunk. I think you're still going to see some of that in the offense, but they've already kind of stressed that they are going to try and push it further downfield in terms of passing scenarios and things like that. And they have made a concerted effort to fix the offensive line situation there. And Ben is like the injury to Ben. I don't think and I think you've probably heard me talking about it. I've tried to tell people that this injury is not, people aren't taking it into consideration. I've had the particular nerve damage and the surgery that Ben Roethlisberger had, and I can tell you right now, it takes almost 2 years for you to get it back 100%. That nerve you can't speed up that nerve healing process. It is what it is, and that feeling in his hand and the strength and the ability to repeat that throwing motion over and over again, it doesn't come back until like the second year. It's kind of like it's Tommy John surgery. It takes extra time. Like, we don't expect a pitcher to come back 100% immediately following Tommy John surgery. We expect them to get eased back into it, and then the second year,
it's almost like a 2-year injury.
It is
for the most part.
It is. Yeah, and you can come back and you can kind of be functional, but you're not going to be what you were previously. And I think a lot of people are selling Roethlisberger short this year. If we're expecting these wide receivers to hold on to the football, and looking at their ADP rankings, they're all fairly high up there. If we're expecting them to have these decent seasons, why do we not expect Ben Roethlisberger to be higher up in the standings? To have him buried at the very bottom of most of your like tier rankings and ADP rankings, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So that's actually a guy that I'm targeting a lot right now.
Yeah, so Ben Roethlisberger we could be targeting, and I think I definitely am as well. But because again, I think the offense is going to have more dynamics to it than it did last year. Again, it wasn't even one dimensional because it's not like they just had a passing game. They could only pass in one way. And why I thought the 11-game win streak wasn't sustainable and they weren't that good.
Oh yeah, worse.
Right. It's just like Ben Roethlisberger has never been this guy. Like they can't sustain these short yardage, high volume passing game and expect to win games. But I do think because Ben is healthier, as I think you're alluding to, or just did allude to, I think Ben will be able to throw the ball downfield more. So I think there's a little bit more verticality. I think that means good things for Chase Claypool. I think you add the running game into it because as much as like James Conner is a great story, I love James Conner, but Najee Harris is such a better back. And to a certain point, like maybe James Conner was never that back. Maybe James Conner just never really was a top-notch elite running back. We just loved. And he always got the volume. Right. The story, we love the volume. We knew he was going to get the targets. We knew he was going to get the carries. But like Najee Harris, I think we can fully expect him to do so much more with that workload, I think, than James Connors did. So I just think this offense is going to be so much more dynamic. And Who does that benefit more, though? Like, does it benefit Deontay Johnson? Does it benefit Chase Claypool? Does it benefit Najee Harris? Just how does it, I guess, this slight shift in the offense, or at least a different look they may give, it could be still short yardage, but just the added dynamics. Who does that benefit more?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, Najee Harris should have a good season with everything that they're doing with the.
Is he RB1? Like, are you drafting him as an RB1 or RB2?
I am drafting him as he's right on that line, like a high end RB2, low end RB1. I think is where he's going to end up when it's all said and done. 10, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there. I mean, he has RB1 upside. It just depends on how much he's going to get used in that short passing game, because I do think they're going to take advantage of that a lot. I don't see him coming off of the field much, just from the preseason games and everything that I've seen. He's legit. So I do think he can get into that. He can get into that RB1 territory. I just think there's a few guys ahead of him, and I personally, I like Deontay Johnson. I mean, everybody's kind of on the Chase Claypool train after what they saw like in the first preseason game. So I think he's going to kind of get a little bit of a bump in stock through the preseason. So I would like to target just Deontay more when it comes to your draft season, just because I think you're going to end up getting a little bit of a discount on him. I think people are going to gravitate towards Claypool a little more.
I think so as well. Like, because of the talent, I think it was such on display last year in a way, and especially that Eagles game in particular. No, I know very well that one, but like his talent was just so much on display last year. He's got a good frame. He's got good speed, good hands. Deontay Johnson's the one that, if Ben does get better and a little bit more efficient and, he is pushing the ball downfield a little bit more, I think Deontay Johnson, look, his career, he's been 11.5 yards per reception, 10.5 yards per reception. So it's nothing big, but I think if he goes up, and I think there's a good chance he could do it, 12, 13 yards per reception, just because the offense is actually willing to push the ball more downfield and Ben is capable of doing it, I think Deontay Johnson becomes so valuable. Now, the drops, yes, it's a thing, but if the drops go down a bit, the efficiency with his catches goes up a bit. I think we're looking at a really good Deontay Johnson season. Definitely over 1,000 yards, but I think we're looking at a great season from him.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, people got to realize if Deontay catches his passes, I mean, just that alone is going to create a huge increase in his yards, because he dropped I think they confirmed like 16 drops last season. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's stupid right there. I mean, if he just gets that down to like 4 or 5, and a couple of those get broken for big gains. Yeah. I mean, we're looking at a completely different scenario, adding a couple of touchdowns, adding, a couple 100 yards to, 200 to 300 yards to your receiving average, and you get that extra game. The output potential for somebody like Deontay Johnson is huge, especially if, like you said, they start pushing the ball down the field, which I do not expect 6.6 yards per pass attempt to be.
No, I can't.
Yeah, that's just not going to happen. That's just an aberration that resulted from the injury and from them trying new things to get everything squared away.
So Pittsburgh and their pass targets are interesting. Where does Juju Smith-Schuster know? Because we mentioned Johnson, we mentioned Claypool. Does that mean we're both kind of like out on Juju?
I know so.
I am. I think I
haven't gotten much of him. Full disclosure, I think that he'll get used plenty, but I think he ends up being the odd man out in this scenario.
Yeah,
and he's from what I understand, he's trying to get some more time. Wasn't there rumblings of him wanting to be lined up outside a little bit more so he could showcase in order for his next contract?
Yes, so I know there's a concerted effort to do that. Yeah.
So I think he is actually looking at himself as probably 1 foot out the door and probably the odd man out as well.
Yeah, I think so. And look, maybe I think I could say pretty confidently, I think Johnson and Claypool are just more talented. Is that like I think is that a fair statement? Like I think in terms of talent upside wise, I just think Johnson and Claypool are just better wide receivers than Juju.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think it's fair. Juju's a fine wide receiver, but I really think Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool could potentially be, elite level talent.
So what wide receiver group that does have a ton of talent, and I don't think I can argue about the talent of each of these guys, Cincinnati, but it just gets really weird of how good do we think this passing offense is going to be? Because I do think Zach Taylor, we should have concerns about. Who gets kind of the boot in this offense in terms of wide receivers, because you have Tyler Boyd there, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. And look, I don't think he's going to take too much away from these guys, but Auden Tate is a serviceable guy too. Like he's certainly going to make his way onto the field. So now comes the question of like, which ones are we drafting? To me, I think Tyler Boyd is the one that for sure he carves himself a good role in this offense because he's a slot receiver. It's just which outside receiver do you like better in Higgins and Chase? And that's, I think, the biggest question to me.
The cheaper one, which that's not really saying much because they're both going exactly the same. I mean, it's a crapshoot. Chase has a lot of chemistry with him, but I mean, Higgins, we saw what Higgins could do last year, even with mediocre quarterback play. He's not a scrub. It's hard to say they have a lot of really, really good pieces. I mean, that 3 wide receiver set is just absolutely phenomenal, and they have depth. So, I mean, what do you do with that? And you have somebody like Mixon who can catch the ball, who can run. If they decide they want to lean on the run and go for this high volume, he's shown that he can handle 20 plus carries a game. It's hard to say. I mean, what is Cincinnati going to want to do? The Bengals are always going to Bengal. So I don't, it's
fair.
It's hard to say. I want to see these guys in week 2 and 3 to see how much. I mean, I love that like 20 ADP of Mixon, where you're getting him in the tail end, second round, beginning of the third round in some situations. That's just a really good volume for a guy that, if he stays healthy, can absolutely win you a league. I mean, he did it a few years ago, so we don't really know what we're going to see with the Bengals.
Yeah, no idea. And I think we have no idea who's going to be the main target for Joe Burrow. I think I would lean
Tyler Boyd.
I love Tyler Boyd because he is completely different from both of those guys. Like Tyler Boyd plays a different position than both of those guys in terms of receiver. He's a slot receiver and he's a lead at it. And look, slot receiver usually tends to lead to more short yardage passes. Guess what? I don't think Cincinnati's going to have very much time to pass the ball, so it just may be out of necessity. Hey, just get it out quick to Tyler Boyd, and he could become a PPR machine. I just think Boyd has been productive. I think he still is sort of has a huge role in this offense, and that doesn't go away because of the addition of Jamar Chase. I think I would lean Jamar Chase a slight bit just because I think he's more versatile than T. Higgins. As well as T. Higgins did last year, there's just physically things that he can't do that Jamar Chase does. So I think it's going to open up the playbook a little bit more for Jamar Chase. It was great for T. Higgins because at least they had a receiver that was capable of getting down the field, a tall receiver, things that they could actually use. But just Chase opens up, I think, the playbook and the route tree so much more that it's just going to demand, I think, more play calls for him.
Yeah. I can get on board with that completely. I want to see. I want to see a little bit more. I want to see a little bit of Joe Burrow and just kind of make sure that he doesn't kind of have the yips from that injury.
Yeah, for sure.
That's always something that you got to be a little bit concerned with when it comes to your quarterbacks right when they first come back, especially a young guy. his first real major injury. Is he gonna be confident? Is he gonna get scared? And if he does get a little bit nervous when the pocket starts to collapse around him, that's more to Tyler Boyd. It's Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon as far as your dumps and your outlet passes. So that's just another plus in that category too, if you want to think about it like that.
You can see all these rankings over at WinDailySports.com. Again, sign up for a gold membership. You can get 6 months for $100 off. Use the promo code NFL2021 and check out everything. That's not just including football, Major League Baseball, PGA Tour, all of it over at WinDailySports.com. So, Stoweby, I may have a problem with this next one because I'm going one more time with this guy, and it's a buy low spot, but I think the upside is there. Am I completely dumb, foolish for liking Odell Beckham coming into this year?
There it was. I was waiting. I knew that's what you didn't even tell me. I knew that's where you were going with that. I had to pull the screen up because I get it in a way. I mean, I get it in a way, but I'm gonna opt for Jarvis Landry just because he's demonstrated he's safer. He's demonstrated a consistency when both of them started opposite each other when they first got there. Landry outperformed Beckham with a full season of work, and Cleveland is going to opt to run the ball a lot. It's going to be a heavy dose of Chubb and Hunt, and Cleveland's offense isn't the type of offense that I think is going to support two like high-end receivers. So I think you're going to have to pick one or the other.
An offense can't support two high-end running backs and two high-end receivers. Like there's eventually like somebody's got to get the shaft here. You know what I mean? Like somebody's got to be out. And so it could be Odell Beckham Jr. Yeah. Like so there has to be somebody.
Yeah. And this is a defensive minded team that is going to play in some absolutely god awful weather when it comes to fantasy playoffs. I mean, you got to remember last year, we had a couple of games where it was 40 to 50 mile an hour winds. It was like between 30 and 40 degrees. And then it was blowing rain and snow during those games. And they were some of the ugliest games. I think it was like the Texans they played against.
Yep. And Texans was a bad one because that was the one Nick Chubb ran out of bounds before the end zone, like clear past the end zone.
Yep. And I had him all over my lineups.
The Eagles one was awful too, because I remember watching that game.
So I mean that's every year, and that's something that people got to take into consideration. So that's an even bigger kind of ding to those wide receivers. And if I'm gonna pick one, I'm gonna pick the steadier option of the two. And it just so happens he's also been the better performer, and he's got a better ADP. I think we're kind of chasing the name a little bit.
Yeah, could be. But what I am drafting him for, or why I have maybe this like hope that he could be good, is we didn't see Odell Beckham in this offense when Baker Mayfield was doing well. Like this was when Baker Mayfield was still trying to get comfortable with Stefanski's offense. Stefanski was trying to ease him into things. He needed to be fixed. So he was working kind of around all of the problems that Baker Mayfield was having. And then the second half of the season, he was great because Baker Mayfield, I'm looking at the splits from last year. The first 4 games of the season, he had a completion percentage of 62%, 60% from games 5 through 8, from games 9 through 12, 65%, and games 13 through 16, 63%. So the second half of the season, it became more efficient. I guess my hope is that Baker Mayfield does become, because he was 62% in total last year. If he becomes a 65% completion passer, I don't think the volume needs to necessarily be there because Odell Beckham is efficient with the targets that he does get to him. So the hope is that just they can have big plays, they can push the ball downfield, and that in this now, Baker Mayfield offense that he's confident in, that does, give a bump up to Odell Beckham.
Now tell me this, because I went ahead and I pulled up the rankings here with the ADP rankings. Let's play with this a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm just going to name off the wide receivers that are kind of a two or three up and two or three down, and you just tell me which way you would go on it. Okay, for wide receivers immediately ahead of him, he's 71 ADP.
Okay.
Chase Claypool at 68.
I would. Oh man, that's tough. That's already the first tough one.
Well, he's ahead of him, so I would expect that to be the hard. I would think that might be the hardest one. There might be one more in there.
Yeah, I would lean a little bit Odell Beckham, just because a lot of Chase Claypool's production came in a very short amount of time. I just there's a lot to go around in that offense. With Cleveland, there is too. But again, I just think with the quarterback play, with how good that team's going to be, I think the upside is a little bit more there for Odell Beckham.
All right, Juju was the one immediately behind him.
Yeah, Juju, I don't like at all. That's just, I guess, a personal preference for me. I just don't think.
I think we're both there on that.
Yeah, I agree.
DJ Chark.
I'd probably go Chark.
Okay. He's at 78, like 7 picks later. Cortland Sutton.
Oh, that's a tough one. Because I think Cortland Sutton might actually take a backseat to Jerry Jeudy this year. Like, I think this is where we see Jerry Jeudy get more comfortable and kind of break out a little bit more.
Jerry Jeudy is 2 picks behind, after Robbie Anderson. So you got some guy. I mean,
you got some other options there, right? And there's some other good options still available. So do you want to take that chance of like the potential upside with the also potential very low floor?
Yeah. And that's just the thing. It's like, you're weighing what you want. I mean, you have the potential upside of Odell Beckham, and we've all seen it before, but we also know that there's definitely downside built in that is as bad as anybody else out there, regardless of ADP. I mean, he could just as easily go off the field, and there are just guys that I prefer within that range, so I don't find myself there. I would rather wait 2 to 3 more rounds and then pick up Landry at that 110.
Yes.
So, you know what I mean? So I can still get a piece of that offense, and I can get somebody like, if I want to Claypool with that upside, if it turns out he can do it over 16 games, or somebody like DJ Chark, who I think it's a given they're going to throw the ball a lot. And then either Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy. Locke looks like he's a little bit, he looks like he might end up getting this starting job. Just kind of,
I think so. I think he starts this season, and he will have the chance to keep that job.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of where I end up at with Odell, and that's why I don't end up getting a lot of them. I look at these pieces that they have around him, and there is always one of those options available around that time that I would rather take than Odell Beckham.
So Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. That is the backfield and coveted backfield. Now, both of these guys, I'm pretty sure were top 10 backs last year, even though Nick Chubb missed 4 games last season. I am drafting Nick Chubb everywhere.
I am too.
If I'm late in that first round, I'm drafting him all over the place.
And if I take Chubb, I'm getting Hunt. I am making sure I'm not going to make the mistake of not handcuffing that backfield. You know that if you're going to go after somebody like Chubb, you need to be aware and plan the rest of your picks accordingly so that you can go ahead and get Hunt and make sure that you get him, because people will not be hesitant to snipe him from you and completely screw you up if you take Hunt or if you take Chubb. There's people that have that mindset where, I'm going to take his handcuff, so then later on he's going to have to trade with me and I'm going to do, you know what I mean? So I jump on that handcuff early so that you don't run into that problem, because somebody will go ahead and do that.
Yeah, and I mean, Kareem Hunt, even if I think Nick Chubb, I think he returns every bit of value, him being
Absolutely.
the 7th overall draft pick, 8th overall draft pick. But, like there's a scenario here where Kareem Hunt is a pretty good RB2 on your roster. So there's definitely a potential for both of them.
Yeah. And there was a lot of times where I had both of them in my lineup last season.
That's so good.
Like I was playing in a league with Scott Engel. We were doing one of those, one of the fan leagues that they were doing on Sirius XM at the early part of the season. And I think I'm pretty sure I ended up with Hunt and Chubb, but I had some injury issues elsewhere. So I ended up having I ended up having Chubb in my RB position, then I had Hunt in my flex. And I mean, when they're giving you, 15, 16, 17 points per week, you really can't argue with it. I mean, I didn't complain a bit.
No, not at all. And both of those guys, I think, are going to have similar roles. And I think why it works is because Nick Chubb can just be a straight up runner in that backfield. And he's so good and so efficient with every single carry that he gets. He's going to return on your investment. And then Kareem Hunt can get the passing targets and also some carries as well.
Get a handful of carries. Imagine if Chubb was on an offense, on that Cleveland offense by himself without Hunt there in the backfield. Like if that situation in Kansas City didn't happen, we would have this Cleveland team with Nick Chubb by himself in that offense.
And I don't even think the passing targets would make too much of a difference. I actually think he'd be close to a 2K back.
Yeah.
Because he would get that many carries, and he's that good with the carries that he gets. Like it's insane how efficient this guy is.
It would be Derrick Henry with a little bit of passing upside. I mean, that's the way that I look at it.
It's incredible to think about. And just like last year, again, in 12 games, he played 12 games. He had over 1,000 yards. When he played a full 16, 298 carries, he had 1,400, close to 1,500 yards. If I were to look at, let's just say, if I were to go to Derrick Henry and I were to see the amount of carries he has what, 378 carries. Can you imagine the production that Nick Chubb would have with 378 carries?
Oh yeah, that would be obscene.
Absurd.
It's just what could have been and what could still be. I mean, because Hunt's going to be searching for something. I know he's not going to want to be the
he could
other
become
guy,
the top guy somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, he was a Russian title, a Russian title winner early on before everything happened in Kansas City. So there's no reason. He's still young. It's not like he's getting his body beat up being a primary back. He still has some tread left on the tire, so he could pick up a starting role somewhere and be very, very productive.
So last team we're going to go through in this division, it's funny enough, the first time we'll mention a tight end, because probably the first one worth mentioning, Mark Andrews. And look, Bateman is going through some injury problems already. Sammy Watkins already going through some injury problems already. Marquise Brown, I just don't really think he's that good. I mean, Mark Andrews is, again, he may be the top guy in Baltimore again.
Yep. I mean, if anybody didn't see Sammy Watkins having injury issues already, you weren't paying attention. The Sammy Watkins thing was always going to happen. So I went ahead and stayed away from it. Even in the best offense in the NFL, he barely produced at random points that you could not figure out. I mean, it would be like a random week 3 blow up with 130 yards and a touchdown or something, and then it would be nothing else for the rest of the season. He does it every year. Everybody sees the name. They're like, oh, this is the year. They've got it figured out, yada 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 yada, and then it's just the same thing. I've been signed off of Sammy Watkins for probably 3 seasons now.
You can't take the injury risk.
So I mean, go ahead and give me Andrews. He's the proven commodity. Sixth round ADP is plenty fair for somebody that could compete with the top, 2 or 3 tight ends in the league. And it's Lamar Jackson's favorite target by far. And it's going to be the same thing, rinse and repeat year in and year out.
I'll say, I think Rashad Bateman is the only viable option to get a wide receiver if he's healthy. And I know he's dealing with a few injury problems.
And I think that's fair, but you're also getting him at a good price too.
Right. I was about to ask, is it he may be the best fantasy option, but is he going at a good enough price to take him in fantasy?
Yeah, with that, let me see. Actually, let me go ahead and modify this just a little bit, and I'm gonna tell you what he is where he's
going at currently.
Yeah, because I have everything going back from all the way back in like February. So
right, and I'm sure it's changed. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. There we go. Okay, all right. My keyboard didn't want to work, so that was fun. All right, so Bateman is 156. I see nothing wrong with that.
I see nothing wrong with that either.
Nope, take a chance.
You know what? It's I see nothing wrong with it, and I want to take him now. Ivan, our guy, good. Like Tylan Wallace is a name to, I would say, keep your eyes on.
Yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily like go out and draft Tylan Wallace. No, I can't do that. But just keep your eye on him. Like if you do see like that first game where like he starts to get onto the field a lot, he gets a few targets, looks like keep your eye on that guy because he's talented, great out of Oklahoma State, really productive college wide receiver. But I don't think it's worth right now taking a chance on him.
Yeah, that's
basically a guy keep your eye on throughout the season.
Yeah, that's a free agent or a fab pickup right there. Just don't waste the draft spot on him because Baltimore will never be a
It's not a passing offense worth taking a risk on just in general.
Yeah. I mean, aside from Andrews, I'm not touching anything. And I mean, even though they are a running team, I don't really like Dobbins at 27-28 because of what we talked about during the last show, the touchdown equity that a running back loses with a mobile quarterback. Yeah. It just kind of hurts. I don't want a running back that's only going to get me, 3 or 4 touchdowns that early on in the draft. I would rather take somebody, like a Mike Davis who I know is going to get plenty of volume, and I know Matt Ryan is not going to steal any of his touchdown equity. It's just not happening.
Speaking of, what's the percentage chance you would give for Lamar Jackson to finish as the number 1 fantasy quarterback?
Oh man, I mean, barring injury, 60+%. Honestly, I think it's going to be, 60% for somebody like Jackson, probably. And I'd probably put Patrick Mahomes. Actually, I might even put Josh Allen ahead of Patrick Mahomes a little bit in terms of percentage wise, just because of the mobility that running makes such a big difference. The 6-point touchdowns, the 10 or the point per 10 yards, it adds up so much over the length of a season. And as good as Mahomes is, and as many touchdowns as he can and likely will throw, he just doesn't run as much as those guys. And like Tom Brady last season was a perfect example. He ended up finishing kind of in the middle of the road, and he was insane with how many touchdowns did he throw? Just looking offhand, what was it, like 43 or something like that? It was some absolutely ridiculous number that he threw last year, and he still ended up like QB 12 or something like that, to QB 13 with that many. It's just that rushing equity means so much for a quarterback nowadays. It's just something that you have to take into consideration.
Yeah, definitely do. And why I think Lamar Jackson, like I would hop all back on the Lamar Jackson train. He's definitely going to have a fantastic season and a great fantasy season.
And he's proven himself durable in these first few years for somebody that runs as much as he does. So it's, in 4 or 5 years, that may be a different story. We may be, talking a different tune, kind of like we do with Cam Newton. But I mean, right now he's definitely shown that he can shoulder the load, and he's done a great job at not taking big hits.
Yeah, has done a great job. And also somebody's done a great job. You, Stoweby, at Stoweby. That is it for the divisional previews. We went through every single bleeping division that the NFL has to offer. Unless there's a secret division that I don't know. We went through every single division. So great job. That wraps up our divisional previews. That doesn't wrap up all of the fantasy coverage that we have here at Win Daily Sports. Again, sign up. 6-month-long membership, $100 off. Just use the promo code NFL2021 when you sign up. And also check back for Win Daily Sports for all of our NFL content, all of our Major League Baseball content, every single sport that you could imagine. Anything that is on a DFS slate, We are talking about it. We are covering it. WinDailySports.com. But Stoweby, tremendous job, man. Well done.
Thank you. You too. It's been fun covering all these. I know we had our little hiatus there in the middle, but everybody's got to get a little time off every now and again.
Yes, we do. And
you got to be able to take a breath, because once the NFL season starts,
it's never ending.
There is no time off. Even if I go on a trip, I'll be bringing my laptop with me.
But we are getting closer to the NFL season, which means plenty more NFL content. That's coming up, Win Daily Sports. But it's been fun for our divisional previews here, WinDailySports.com.